They didn't tell me they were leaving. I found out when I checked my phone and saw the boarding confirmation. My parents had flown home, and my 8-year-old was still standing in a foreign airport, alone, waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Let me be clear about one thing right away. My daughter was not lost. She was not wandering. She was not confused about where she was supposed to be. She was exactly where my parents told her to wait. We were traveling together, a family trip that had already been tense before we ever left home. Small comments, passive remarks. That familiar undercurrent where nothing is said directly, but everything is felt. They'd insisted on handling most of the logistics, flights, timing, meeting points. I didn't love that, but at the time I didn't think it was dangerous. I thought it was control. I was wrong about the scale of it. The morning it happened, we were at the airport earlier than planned. My parents said they needed to check something at the counter. They told my daughter to stay seated near the gate. "Don't move," my mother said. "We'll be right back." She nodded. She trusted them. I stepped away briefly, not far, just enough to handle a separate issue with our luggage. When I came back, the seats were empty. Not just my parents, everyone. At first, I assumed I'd misunderstood the gate change. Airports are loud, chaotic, constantly shifting. I checked the screen, then my phone. That's when I saw the notification. Boarding complete. Flight departed. I stood there staring at the screen, trying to make it make sense. Then my phone buzzed again. A boarding confirmation, under my parents' names, returning home. And that's when I heard my daughter's voice, small, careful. "Mom?" She was standing exactly where they left her, in a country she didn't know, surrounded by strangers, waiting for people who had already boarded a plane. I knelt down and held her so tightly, she asked if she'd done something wrong. That question broke something in me, because in her mind, there had to be a reason. Children assume abandonment is their fault. That was the moment I stopped assuming this was confusion, or poor communication, or an accident. They had left, intentionally. And whatever came next wasn't going to be about misunderstanding, it was going to be about accountability. I didn't panic. I needed to stay functional. I walked straight to the airline desk with my daughter's hand in mine and told them exactly what had happened. An unaccompanied child, left behind. Guardians departed the country. The change in their posture was immediate. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was protocol. While airport staff contacted supervisors, I called my parents. It rang twice before my mother answered. Her voice was calm, almost relieved. "Oh," she said, "you found her." I asked the question slowly because I needed to hear the answer clearly. "Why did you leave without her?" There was a pause. Then my father took the phone. "You were taking too long," he said. "We assumed you'd figure it out." Figure out that they had boarded a flight home without an 8-year-old. Figure out what, exactly? I told them where we were. I told them what airline staff were doing. I told them authorities were now involved. That's when the story changed. Suddenly, it was a misunderstanding. They thought I'd already taken her. They assumed someone else was watching her. They didn't realize the flight had boarded so quickly. Every sentence started with "we thought." None of them started with "we're sorry." My daughter was sitting beside me, holding her backpack with both arms. She whispered, "Am I in trouble?" I muted the call. "No," I said. "You did exactly what you were told." That mattered. Because whatever excuse they were building, I wasn't letting it land on her. When I unmuted, my mother said, "You're making this sound worse than it was." That sentence told me everything. Not "is she okay?" Not "what do we need to do?" Not "how do we fix this?" Just damage control. Airport staff asked me to step aside and explain again. Passports, custody, contacts. They were kind but thorough. because this wasn't a family argument. It was an international incident involving a child. When I told my parents this, my father's voice hardened. "You didn't need to involve anyone," he said. "You always overreact." I looked at my daughter, still quiet, still trying to be good, still waiting for adults to do the right thing. "This isn't an overreaction," I said. "This is the consequence of what you did." They didn't fly back. They didn't offer to help. They said they'd talk about it later. And in that moment, something settled in me. They had crossed a line that couldn't be explained away. And whatever relationship I thought we had before this trip no longer existed. Because when someone can justify leaving a child alone in a foreign country, there is nothing left to clarify. Once airport authorities were involved, everything moved quickly and quietly. They separated us from the main terminal and brought in a supervisor who explained the situation in careful, neutral language, the way professionals do when something serious has happened, but emotions are high. My daughter was officially logged as an unaccompanied minor, not because she'd wandered off, but because the adults who were supposed to protect her had boarded an international flight without her. They asked me questions I never thought I'd have to answer. Who was responsible for her travel? Who had authorized her boarding pass? Who was meant to be supervising her at the time of departure? I answered calmly, but every word felt heavy, because I knew exactly how this looked from the outside, and it looked as bad as it was. My daughter sat beside me, feet dangling from the chair, swinging slightly. She didn't cry. She just stayed very still. That frightened me more than tears would have. Children go quiet when they're trying not to make things worse. The airline arranged temporary clearance for us to leave the secure area and rebook flights. We wouldn't be flying out that day. We wouldn't even be flying out the next. Paperwork had to be reviewed, custody verified, statements documented. This wasn't a delay. It was an intervention. I sent one final message to my parents. "She is safe. We are staying here until we can fly home. Do not contact her." They didn't reply. That night, in a small hotel room near the airport, my daughter finally asked the question I'd been dreading. "Why didn't they wait for me?" I didn't answer immediately, because any answer that protected them would betray her, and any answer that blamed them too harshly would burden her. So I told her the truth, carefully. "They made a bad decision," I said, "and adults are responsible for their decisions, not kids." She nodded slowly. Then she said, "I thought I was invisible." I held her until she fell asleep, and in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about a trip. This was about safety, trust, and whether I would ever allow people like that access to her again. We flew home 3 days later, different airline, different route, different rules. My daughter slept the entire flight with her head on my shoulder, one hand wrapped tightly around my sleeve, not because she was afraid, but because she needed certainty. I didn't move. When we landed, my parents sent messages. Not apologies, not concern, explanations. They said it had been a misunderstanding, that they assumed I'd already taken her, that I was blowing it out of proportion. They never asked to speak to her. They never asked how she was sleeping. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't argue. I didn't list the facts. I didn't ask for accountability. I sent one message. You will not be alone with my child again. No discussion, no negotiation, no exceptions. They were offended. They said I was overreacting, that I was punishing them, that I was being dramatic. I didn't respond. Because when someone can justify leaving a child alone in a foreign country, their opinion of my boundaries no longer matters. My daughter asked once if she would see them again. I told her the truth, in a way she could carry. Some people don't get second chances with safety, I said, and that's not your fault. She nodded. Then she said something that settled it completely. I don't want to wait for them anymore. Life moved on, quieter, safer, clearer. There were no more passive comments, no more control disguised as help, no more situations where my child's well-being depended on someone else's convenience. What happened in that airport changed me, not because I was shocked, but because it stripped away any doubt about who I needed to protect. My parents left my 8-year-old in a foreign country and flew home without her. They expected excuses to fix it. They expected time to smooth it over. They expected forgiveness. What they got instead was distance, permanent. Because when someone shows you they can abandon a child and explain it away, the safest decision is the one you never have to justify again. And that's the decision I made, once, and for good.